What's going on, guys? Welcome to the 36th Xamarin Android tutorial. And that being said, it's been so far inside of the tutorial series, what I started thinking is that we've definitely are at a point where we probably are familiar with Android development, Xamarin Android development to be more specific. And I started thinking, what can we do to really kick it up a notch, to really switch gears into the next phase of the tutorial series. And that's what got me thinking, well, just for this few videos, what we can do is enable a user sign-in for Google+. Okay, so the Google+ sign-in, if you guys seen it before, a lot of applications are using it as a way to not have to write their own login system, but just simply sign in with Google, and we'll use that information and we'll use that to authenticate you through our application. And not to be honest, a lot of times when I see this, I don't create a new account. I'm just like, oh, I already have a G+. I'm just going to use a Google+, and I'm just going to sign in with that through this application. So getting it to work can be a little cumbersome, so I decided to make a few videos on how to do it, okay? So but before getting any further, let's go ahead and check out how this thing works, okay? So we have a simple application here, guys, and it's just going to feed in some information from Google+ once the user signs in, okay? So this emulator has I've made an email for it, and therefore it's going to have a G+. So this comes up as soon as the user wants to sign in, and what it's asking is, hey, do you want this application to know some basic stuff from your G+? And if you consent to it, you'd sign in, and it says okay. And then after that, what it does is it goes ahead and it fills some information, and this is coming from G+, the G+ servers, okay? So this is anything that we're writing. If you sign in with your application as of right now, it's going to show you some different stuff depending on if you have these things filled out in your G+. So if we come over to the Google+ here for the emulator, I can come into the home page, and you can see that same information is displayed here. So the tagline and some bragging rights, and it happens to be in a complicated relationship. It doesn't want to decline its state to a gender. So there it is, guys. So it's pulling that information and it's putting it inside of here, okay? And this may seem pretty simple and easy to do, but it can be pretty cumbersome. And because of that, I want to make a few videos on how to do it, because I probably lost a couple years of my life because I was so frustrated getting this thing to work. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that you have to do at very, very precisely, and it has to be done in a correct order, or you're just going to be pulling your hair out. So, and with Xamarin, it's even a little more hard because of the fact that there's just not that many resources on it right now on how to do it. There's a few good articles, and most of the other ones are just how to do it with the Android using Java, which there's a few more resources there. And there are some differences with that, of course, with Xamarin. So those are some problems you'll run into as well. So these videos may get a little lengthy, but guys, if you're really looking onto doing a G+ sign-in, which is really convenient, really modern way to do things right now in applications, follow along with me and we will get it working together, okay? So that you will have something like this, and then you'll be able to use the G+ IDs and all that to be able to plug in, and then you can, if you're making a game, these are great because then you can use Google+ to chart your scores, your user scores, and do a whole bunch of stuff. So this is just a start, just to get you guys started in the right direction with integrating your application with G+, okay? So first, let's take a look at what we need to do to get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, guys, is we want to start a new project, okay? So that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start a new instance of Visual Studio, and we're going to start a new project, a brand new one, and we're going to start from scratch, okay? So I want to make sure that I get into detail as much as possible. And if I get into too much detail, I'm sorry, but it's better to have too much detail than none, because like I said, this can get really cumbersome setting this up, and not just the code, but mostly just making sure that everything else is right with the console and the API console and then the Play services, okay? So let's start a blank app, okay? And we'll just call it G+ tutorial, is what I will call it. And here we go, guys. Let's do it. Okay, so once again, like always, we have a blank app, okay? So let's get rid of this stuff. I'll go into here, and I am going to Move this over, and what I'm going to be targeting is API level 19, and 21 is going to be my compile version, and then I'm going to target 21 right here as well. Okay. All right. So that being said, you can go ahead and close that now. All right, so now that we have that, all right, so what we first want to do is you want to download the Google Play component, okay? So the services component, which we can get right here, okay? So if you right click on components and we do edit and get more components, we can come into here, all right? And then if you just type in like Google Play, that should be enough to have it come up. And as of right now, update 13 is the latest version for me. Now for you guys and for at the viewing of this video, it's going to be 13, but just get the latest version, whatever it is. It's always best to get the latest version of it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to my app, and most of the time it should do it. It should install everything and any prerequisites for you, okay? So as you can see right here, it's adding some references, and it looks like it's still doing some stuff. So if it takes a few seconds, don't worry. That's usually what it does, especially if the package is pretty big. Okay, loading. What it's doing is it's getting this reference library support for version 7 and version 7 of Media Router. So it's getting all those dependencies before they can really act. So it's not just downloading one library, it's essentially downloading multiple libraries in order to get this guy working, okay? All right, so package has been installed. And I go to my components, looks good. Looks good. Okay, so everything looks like it's been installed pretty good. Now, if we rebuild it, let's go ahead and as soon as we get that component and we add it to our application, let's go ahead and do a rebuild, okay? And you may notice it is taking a little longer to rebuild than normal, and that's because we've added a whole bunch of libraries that it has to now compile, as well as our code, which really isn't much, but all these libraries it's going to compile with it, okay? So let it do its rebuild first and make sure that everything's good. And it is possible that we are going to get an error or a few errors after we do a rebuild. And if you do, don't panic. I will show you how to get rid of them right after. But I want you to see the errors, so that way once you see them, if you ever see them in the future, then possibly you can do the same fix and it will take care of the errors in that case, okay? So here, doing some rebuilds. Okay, so we get a fail, okay? So we don't really get any errors though. We come over here, there's no errors. There's warnings, but there's no errors. And then all we get right here is this compile unexpected top level error. And you're like, what the heck's this? And it's failed, but there's no errors. So if you get something like this, guys, what we need to do is we need to come into our properties, okay? And this is where we need to increase the heap size. Now, if you come into options, advanced, and then Java max heap size, 1G is what we want to put, and that will specify that this is going to be the maximum heap size, okay? So once doing that, do another rebuild, and then that should fix your problem. If you're getting that top level error, that should fix your problem, and it should succeed, okay? And that can be a really weird error because there's not really an error at all. It's just doesn't work and it just fails to rebuild. So it's really ambiguous and it can be really frustrating. But if you ever get that, just increase the heap size, and that's what's going to happen. That's going to be a direct effect from downloading the Play services, okay? So once you do a rebuild and after you increase the heap size, we should get a succeeded rebuild, okay? A success, okay, guys? So that being said, we have now taken care of that. So now we can use Google Play services, okay? So just an easy test to make sure that it's working, we can do something like, we're gonna do Google API client, Google API client was what we'll name it. And if the references and all this stuff's working, we should be able to resolve it and import the library, one of the namespaces of the library. Okay, and as you can see, it did, and it looks like that everything is good to go. So if you guys will be able to import this right here, then Google Play Services has been successfully installed and everything's looking good. Okay, now that being said, the next thing we need to do is we need to set up the API console. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to come into our favorite browser, and what we need to do now is we need to open up Google API console. Okay, and if you don't have a project yet on your email, like I said, I'm just using the Xamarin player, the one that's created for the Xamarin Android player, then you should get something like this. Okay, so if you already do have projects, you'll get a project screen, but if you haven't, create a project. Okay, so this is going to be a project that's going to be linked to our project in Xamarin. Okay, so we should get something like this, guys, and what we're going to do now is come into here and see that we have our project. Okay, and this is called API project. Okay, and we can come into here, and if you don't like the name of that one, then you can come into your credentials or your billing and settings and actually just delete project. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just delete it. Okay, so now I'm going to start a new project. Okay, so I'm just going to make a project that's going to be, we'll just call it G plus integration or G plus tutorial. Okay, so this is going to be my project. If you guys want to name it something different, that's totally fine. Now Google now is going to create the project G plus tutorial, and once it's done, it'll inform you that it's done, and we can continue on configuring that project to link it back to our Xamarin app in Visual Studio. Okay, so now the first thing we want to do, guys, is we want to go to API and authorizations and go to APIs. Okay, so these are some default APIs that it allows you to have, and you can turn them off or on as you want, but the one that we need right now is the Google Plus API. Okay, and we can find that right here, guys. This is the Google Plus API that we need to enable. If we don't have this enabled, then it's not going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the right and turn it on. We'll accept the agreement, and then come into here, and then this is the Google Plus API. We can see that now it's turned on for this project. Okay, that's awesome. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to come into our credentials, and we need to create a client ID. Okay, so this is the client ID that's going to use to authenticate the user with when our application is using the user's credentials on G+. Okay, so we just need to make sure we have one of these. Now we only come into here, and it's going to pull up this dialog box, and we can go ahead and click on installed applications. But before we can, if you don't have one, it's going to say, hey, hold on, you need to configure your consent screen. And go ahead and click on that, and now our consent screen is going to be looking, it's this thing that popped up in the beginning of the tutorial where it's going to show like your logo, and then it's going to show the application that's trying to get to it. Okay, so it's saying like these things need to link your application and the user's G+. Okay, and it's going to look something like this. So this is where you configure that screen, and depending on what you put on here, it will look something like this. Okay, so I'm going to choose an email, which is going to be the email that you're logged in with, probably just a Xamarin player at Gmail, and it's going to be your own email. So go ahead and put in your email that you want associated with this, and then the product name is something that you can name whatever you want, and I'll go ahead and name it G+ tutorial. Okay, and all this other stuff is optional down here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save it, and now that I saved it, it lets me come back here and says, okay, now you have a consent screen, so we can continue on with making a client ID. Okay, so now we click on installed applications and click on Android, and here is where we need to configure some other stuff. Okay, so it wants our package name, and it wants our signing certificate fingerprint. Okay, and where you can get the package name is over here. If you come into your properties, and you go into your Android manifest tab, you can see that your package name is listed right here, okay? So just do a copy and paste over to here, and that's it, okay? So now for the SHA-1, this is a little bit of a tricky part that we need to do, okay? So for Xamarin, at the time of install, it will make a key store, okay, a debug.keystore. And if you're making a release app, if you're actually going to release this app, then it's going to be different. You're going to need to change this, okay? But if you're simply debugging and testing like I am right now, the debug.keystore will suffice, okay? So to get that, guys, Xamarin will store it. The default location for it will be in the C drive, users, and then go into the app data, okay? And if app data, you don't see an app data, make sure that you have hidden folders enabled, okay? So this will, you can check it here, hidden items, and then check it again to see hidden items, okay? And then on Windows 7, it's over here in organize, okay? So this is a Windows 8 way to do it, but in Windows 7 it's a little different, but make sure that this is unchecked because app data is a hidden file or folder by default. Go into local, Xamarin, mono for Android, and here's our debug.keystore file. Okay, so this is the guy that we need, all right? Now, let's go ahead and I'm gonna hit Control N, okay? I'm gonna create another instance of the file explorer, and I'm going to come into where my Java is installed, okay? And that's C, program files, Java, and then I'm going to come in to my JDK. Let's go back actually over here to the JDK right here, and go into the bin, and then now you'll see something that's called key tool, okay? So if you hold shift while you right click, you can open the command window from here, okay? So what we want to do, we can give it the path to the debug.keystore, or what we could do is we can simply just copy and paste it over temporarily to this folder that we're running the command line in, okay? So I've copied the debug.keystore over there because I don't want to give it a file path. I just want to keep it in this folder. And now that I've done that, what I can do is I can run the keytool.executable.list keystore, okay? And now I can do debug.keystore, the name of the file, and V for verbose, okay? And then the default password for it is just Android, all lowercase, okay? And that's gonna be probably for you as well. That's just the default password that the keystore uses, okay? So now in here, what we can look at here is the SHA-1 password right here, okay? Now, with that being said, just go ahead and edit, mark, and you can go ahead and copy it, hit enter to paste, copy it, okay? And come back over here into our API and go ahead and paste it here, okay? And then you want to enable deep linking, okay? And then you just go ahead and create the client ID. All right, so there it is. There we have it. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to come into our Visual Studio and configure some other stuff there. Okay, so we have a consent screen, we have a client ID, everything's looking pretty good now. Okay, this is how it's going to be linked up to our application on Xamarin. Okay, all right, so now that that's all good, the next thing that we need to do is we need to come into our manifest file, and we need to have some permissions that our application can do. Okay, so let's go ahead and add 3 permissions. Okay, and I'll go ahead and copy and paste them over. And these permissions are going to be internet, get accounts, and use credentials. So just enter them in exactly in the spot right here, or you can come into here and just select them and check them here. Okay, so however you want to do it, but I'm just going to edit the manifest, the raw code manually. And this is just so the application can use internet, get accounts, and use credentials, okay, from the user that's using this application, okay? Now, the next thing that we need to do, the last thing we need to do in this manifest is inside of the application tag, make sure you copy and paste this right here, okay? Exactly how you see it right here. So make sure this is correct, and then make sure this is right here, okay? So if this is all good, then go ahead and save it, close it, and there we go, okay? So now we have our library, we have our API console set up, and we have our manifest all good to go, okay? And everything is looking really good at this point, all right? So now the last thing that we need to do in this video for part 1 is we want to create our sign-in button, okay? So the G+ sign-in button, which is actually built into the library, okay, the Google Play library. So if we come into our main layout, which we haven't yet touched, let's go ahead and delete this normal button, okay? And we can see that we just have a blank layout right here, okay? So inside of our linear layout, what we want to do, we want to do com Google Android GMS common sign in button, okay? Just like that, okay? Because this is already like built in, okay? So we're not creating this button, we're not styling it or anything, we're just gonna put it in here and it's going to render just the way you saw it in the beginning of this video, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy over some values that are pretty trivial, okay? Just an ID and all this stuff, we can make it however you want, match parent, wrap content, okay? So we can have these properties however we want, okay? Just make sure that this is exactly how you see it right here, okay? Now we'll come into here and you see that I can't render it because it is a custom component, okay, within a third-party library. All right, so what we can do now is we can go ahead and run this application. Actually, before I do that, I am going to change oh, that's already good, okay. So everything should run as we expect. Let's go ahead and make sure of that. So we've done a lot of like this setting up, not really any kind of coding, which is actually a lot of the bulk of the work is really just setting it up and getting it all configured. That way it will work. So that a lot of times when you're working with like stuff like this and SDKs, doing that is the hard part. So I hope to think that we have the hard part done, and in the next video we can just concentrate on actually coding up the rest of it and getting it working the way we want it to, okay? All right, awesome. Okay, so here we go. We got this, guys. Awesome. Okay, so I hope that you're seeing what I'm seeing right here, which is, you know, to anyone else, it's just a button. It's no big deal, but for us programmers and developers, it is a gleaming shine of hope. Because sometimes doing this stuff is really cumbersome and it's just like, it just takes so long to get it going. So when you finally do get it going, it's just really rewarding, okay? So seeing that really makes me happy. I hope that you see this on your screen as well. And of course, it's not gonna do anything, but it looks really pretty right now, and that's pretty much all it does. Okay, so in the next video, what we're gonna do is we're going to add in some functionality to it, of course, and get it going to where the user can sign in, and then it'll autofill all that stuff like you saw in the last tutorial. Okay, so that is going to be done in the next part. So stay tuned and watch the next video to get it going, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you guys are having some problems or issues or having suggestions, please feel free to leave some comments below. Let me know and I will do my best to get you guys up and running. All right, thanks for watching, guys.